welcome to this webinar group dedicated to energy transition, financing and fossil fuel phase out, overcoming barriers for clean energy and for both hopefully developing and developed nations, and focusing on transmission, distribution and storage. So I'm Cliff Pryor, formerly CEO at Better Society Capital and then at Global Steering Group for Impact Investing, and now advising a group of highly innovative impact and AI founders. We're going to have a short introduction from Professor Grillo. The students will share their presentations around 15-20 minutes, comments from our discussants, and a closing short Q&A if time allows in our 1 hour time slot. So just a few opening remarks from me whilst other folk are joining in. I mean, this is a great week, isn't it? We had really good news, fresh data showing wind and solar beating coal for the first half year ever. A real first, driven by China and India, but also from Pakistan to Nigeria to many, many other countries, apart from 2 countries, Europe and the USA. So the economics has flipped. New solar and onshore wind are now cheaper than new power in many markets. Battery costs are sliding, lithium prices have gone dramatically down. And the tech keeps leaping ahead with cheaper materials. We do need to make projects investable with all the financial tools that we can use, but the choke points are still with us. And those choke points are the problems of wires and of time, transmission build out and storage, and as we were saying before on transmission and distribution. But there is also the social license, particularly in the richer countries. People want clean power, but they don't want pylons anywhere near them. And that social license is a significant also piece. So I'm really looking forward to hearing about our students. I've read the papers. And first, I would like a short introduction, please, from Professor Grillo. Francesco.
Thank you very much, Cliff. Can you hear me? Yes, okay. This is the 5th of the semi-last webinar on the road to Venice. And I am particularly pleased to kick off this webinar, which is not on energy transition as a whole, as we wrongly titled the flyer of the webinar, but it's more focused on grids and somewhat storage. Super very interesting. A multinational we have here, and by the way, the country which is the most represented country is not Italy at all, but is Brazil, with Leah, with Jacqueline, with Julia, and with Gustavo, 4 people from Brazil. And we will have others join. On what you were saying, Cliff, yes, you are very right. However, just to give you a very small number that we mentioned in the concept paper that we are finalizing, when we had the first COP in 1995, whose president was a very young Minister of Environment called Angela Merkel. She was the first president of the first COP in 1995. The share of total energy consumption coming from fossil fuel was 85%. Julia, are you there? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I was saying, yeah, the share of total energy consumption coming from fossil fuel in 1995 was 85%. Today, 1 month before the next COP 30, the share dropped dramatically to 82% in 30 years. Of course, as Cliff mentioned, the dynamics has been very different for different countries, for different value chain of the so-called energy transition. But the overall result after 30 years has been a little bit like sort of not just disappointing, but really bizarre. So, having said that, thank you so much, and I will leave the floor to Cliff and then students.
Thank you very much. So actually, I think we'll go straight to our students. So we have, I think, Emery, we have Jacqueline, Victoria, and Luciano. And I would be very keen to hear your propositions, please.
Thank you very much, Cliff. Before sharing our screen, I would like to introduce ourselves. So I'm Jacqueline. I'm doing this master's in sustainability management here in SDA Bocconi. I'm from Brazil, and I'm super excited with this project.
I can continue. Hi, I'm Emre. I'm joining from SDA Bocconi Sustainability Management Master Program. We are all four actually from the Master in Sustainability Management Program. And I'm from Istanbul, Turkey, and I'm really excited to speak this up.
Thank you. I think we have Luciano.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Luciano Girardi. I'm from South America, Chile. I've been working the last years in the energy market, and I'm very happy to be with you today.
Thank you. And I think we have Victoria.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm Victoria from Argentina. I have a background in finance and also in sustainable finance. I'm also part of the sustainability management program at SDA Bocconi, and I'm super happy to do this project.
Okay, this is a South American takeover. I think there's another Jacqueline. No? Oh, there isn't. Okay. So please show us your work.
1 second. I just need to, oops. I don't know, my system I will leave the conference and join in a second to share the screen. 1 moment. It's a system thing. 1 second.
Thank you very much. Just to mention, we have some other folk joining us. Professor Castelnuovo, we have Lea Richard, Carolina Nisa, and Julia Paletta, who will be commentating and discussing after the students have put forward their material. And I am just filling in now whilst the technology is sorted out. Okay. Whilst we're waiting for the screen to come up, I'm going to randomly pick somebody up. Here we go, Victoria Feinvloch. Just tell us a little bit about why did you get into this piece of work?
Well, as having a background in finance and sustainable finance, also as a volunteer for a nonprofit organization in South America that is called Techo. They build houses for low-income families. I think energy transition plays a key role, and we need to try to tackle the challenges and solve where are the opportunities in order to bring all stakeholders in the same picture and move forward to close the gap.
Thank you very much indeed. We still haven't got this back on the screen, so I'm going to go to Luciano. What brought you to this topic? You're muted at the moment. Yeah.
So I have said I've been working on energy the last 4 years. And since I work in energy, I see this one big problem. That is the one we will talk today. That is grids, transmission and distribution grids that start being a bottleneck for the energy, for our energy trend, for what we want to do. So I think it was a good opportunity to investigate more about that and to look which opportunities are there in the market in the different countries to face this challenge.
Thank you. Thank you. Gabriela, are you there at the moment? Because I think we are having a problem here. We're not getting the screen from this.
Yes, I'm here. I think the also other students, if they can share their screen and to present the work, or only Jacqueline as the PowerPoint.
Oh, yes, we can try.
Okay. Whilst we're looking for that, Emre, what brought you to this project?
As Luciano, I was also actually a power trader for the last two years, and I was trading in European energy markets. And every summer, I was seeing this bottlenecks in the grid systems, like increased prices and like all these grid problems, like grids are getting like popped, like you cannot use it, and like prices shoot up, shoot down, like. And after hearing about Venice conference, it just made sense for us to think about what is the problem, and we wanted to come up with this issue, and I hope it can help also in the upcoming COP30. It's gonna be one of the topics that will be discussed.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we're still not getting the slides. So
Why don't we?
Can we send it through email, and maybe if we cannot?
Hello,
Because my
I'm back.
Okay, Jacqueline.
I'm so
we
sorry.
were really
had a
lost.
problem. I don't know what happened, but my system got down and I cannot share the screen. So I don't know if any other student could share our presentation, please.
Yes, 1 second. So I will share it.
oh, this is looking good.
Okay, good. Okay, great.
Perfect. Thank you very
Okay.
much. I'm so sorry.
Not at all. Not at all. We're looking for this. Thank you. So please, who is starting off on this?
I'm sharing. Can you see it?
Yes, we
Yes.
can see.
Yeah.
Okay. So
That's great. So sorry.
who
Okay,
is,
so
yeah, thank you.
okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Today we will talk about transmission and distribution challenge in the energy transition. It's a big topic. It's a hot topic around the world, in Europe, United States, Asia, and also it's a very important topic in Latin America and in Brazil. Okay, so we can advance. So we know that global policies like the Paris Agreement or the EA Net Zero Roadmap have prioritized secure and sustainable energy system, no? And renewables are have been playing an important role. And I want to put solar as the central part of this transition. Actually, with some data of the EA in 2023, 15% of the global generation capacity was solar, and it's growing. Each time we see more investments in solar around the world. However, while electricity access increased, that is something good, and demand are rising with electrification, grid infrastructure is lagging behind. And that this effect, this phenomenon, is creating a major bottleneck, including something that is very important around the world is the renewable curtailment that the ETC have measured it as 3,000 gigawatts of projects that are waiting the connection, that were waiting the connection in 2024, and therefore it represents a barrier for the industrial decarbonization. The shortfall in this transmission distribution investment has both economic effect, for example, loss of productivity, a slower growth of economies, but also a social effect with unequal access, lower HDI, and other consequence. So expanding grids and making them better is essential for a more secure, equitable, and net zero energy future. So what's the objective of our paper, of our document, is to analyze the key challenges of this global energy transition, focusing on the role that transmission and distribution networks have in enable renewable transition, but also electrification of different industrial activities, while also assessing the technical and financial solutions that are needed to overcome these challenges. So what, before going to the next part, what was our methodology? So it was analysis that adopted a multidisciplinary approach, integrating economy, policy, and technological perspective. We use different data from the International Energy Agency, the International Renewable Energy Agency, the World Bank, and also the Energy Transition Commission. And we complement that by selecting some case studies. So we selected some case studies, for example, in Germany, Brazil, etc., in order to allocate those challenges and opportunities. So what are the main challenges? If you can advance. So global energy transition is accelerating throughout this phenomenon that we saw, that is the record renewable deployment and the rising electrification in the different countries. But as we saw, grid is failing to keep pace. That's affecting investment, and this is mainly because of supply bottleneck, permitting, and this accelerated deployment of renewables. So we put grid infrastructure delay as the main challenge, and there are four different parameters that is affecting that. So first, we have the high increase of renewables. So renewable generation, especially solar and wind, but solar is expanding faster than grid infrastructure, creating an imbalance between the rapid generation growth and the slow transmission development. Now, the second one is the demand part. So the electrification in the different countries is increasing. It's increasing because of industry, transport, and building, and it's boosting the electricity demand and grid loads. And they are increasing because of different phenomenon. For example, heat pumps. So heat pumps is a new trend in industrial activities, but also other activities, for example, electric mobility. The third point that is affecting this delay on grid infrastructure is the delay on supply chain. So more demand and an increase of renewables did that we need an increased investment on transmission and distribution. So there is an increase on the demand from transmission and distribution companies for different material. Global supply chain disruption and manufacturing bottleneck for key components are extending the project's timeline and rising costs. For example, the EA says that generators, utilities, IPPs can wait from 2 to 4 years to get their transformers. And finally, and maybe the most important one, is bureaucracy or permitting. Permitting remain being the main barrier for grid expansion because of the complex approval of different processes, but also because of public opposition to big projects of infrastructure that like transmission and distribution.
So what are the overall costs of inaction? In general, we believe, and according to all our research we have done, is that the overall cost of inaction outweighs the investments needed today. So what is the cost of inaction? Inaction means every year of underinvestment rates locks in fossil hours and emissions and raise future system costs in curtailment, grid dispatch, and congestion. Grid spend is less than the ratio of generation. This means that 1,650 gigawatts of wind and solar is stranded in queues, and this means high volatility and higher prices or lower prices indeed. The second point is keeping current policies are already paying a cost of inaction because around 5% of GDP loss by 2050 with the current policies have a huge constraint in our economy. And for mid-century, with a scenario of 3.2 degrees of difference, it could be up to 18%. So what is the last point on the cost of inaction? Climate-related disasters are already playing a huge role. They cost around $3.6 trillion of dollar cost in our economy. And in the recent, taking only the last 5 years, is around 1 trillion. So what we can do now in order to reduce this cost of inaction? Well, we can start by investments in clean technologies, leveraging from 2.2 trillion to 4.5 trillion. And this could avoid around 10 and 15% of GDP loss. And this will allow storage and electrification, supporting affordability of energy. The second point is unblock supply chain and permits, because cutting multi-layer on the delays can reduce the chance of curtailment or fossil fuels backup fields and the gap of waiting. The third point is connect the black clock. This means that wind and solar are waiting for grid connection, and this will immediately lower the cost of energy in the system, lower the curtailment and the congestion, and we will have fewer price volatility and negative price events. And lastly, and most important one, the lead grid capex to increase to $600 billion by 2030. This can move grids towards a parity with generation, that is the ratio that is not 1-to-1, as we mentioned before. This action now can secure electricity supply, and this requires more than investments in grids. It requires viable business models, policy support, and global cooperation. Moving to the cost of inaction, which are the consequences of not investing right now in energy transition, especially in distribution and transmission? Well, we decided to analyze it through 4 pillars. First, climate cost, second, permitting cost, third, social cost, and systemic cost. On the first pillar, we can see that according to the EU evidence, near zero negative prices in Spain were seen, and 11% of variable renewables curtailed in Ireland, or in 2024 April, due to insufficient grid and storage. This delay in grid generates delay in renewables and higher emissions and carbon lock-in. Moving to permitting costs, on the global aspect, bureaucratic delays and complex permitting processes impose significant costs by installing clean energy and grid projects. So long timeliness higher the WACC and delay the benefits. So this is not only from a policymaker, but also from companies. And on the third aspect, from the social component, climate change also generates a lot of incidents in society. In general, research projects like low and middle income countries, climate change is projected to cause between 4.1 and 5.2 billion additional illness cases and 14.5 and 15.6 million deaths by 2050. So energy poverty outweighs damages and undermines productivity and welfare overall. And the last point I would like to mention here is a systemic cost. When grids don't keep up on demand, systems lean on fossil capacity. And this cost of inaction shows up as systemic risk to energy security. And the last point regarding energy is congestion and curtailment. Higher system consumer costs, stranded assets, risk of transition is disorderly. So what are the key takeaways here? First, delayed grids generate delay in renewables and more fossil hours and emissions, therefore. Second, higher WACC plus low grid spends impose a higher bill today and assets underutilization tomorrow. The third point is delay in transmission generates higher energy poverty risks and climate-related health harms. And on the last point, weak networks turn climate stress into blackout risk. Moving to the opportunity space.
Thank you, Victoria. If I have to build on Victoria's urgencies and matters, to overcome this, we will see like three different interconnected technical pillars when it comes to opportunities. First, starting from the battery energy storage systems are essential for stabilizing and decarbonizing our grids, and that systems enhance stability by regulating voltage and frequency and smoothing renewable fluctuations and stabilizing weak grids. Secondly, the second option is basically the smart grid. Smart grid systems represent the digital transformation of energy management, enabling efficient, secure communication, and automated demand response systems further streamline communication between utilities and consumers, which is reducing response times. And the third, extended routes. Of course, the physical expansion of transmission and distribution are indispensable for renewable integration and electrification. With this expansion, we are expecting reducing network congestion and optimizes energy flow. If you go to the other slide, Victoria. When it comes to financing of these opportunities, the massive infrastructure overhaul required is by the central economic recovery, which is the cost of capital. This cost is often running 2 times higher in developing countries than in advanced economies. And this elevation comes from, of course, complex political, economic, and foreign exchange risks, mainly as a specific benchmark. Brazil, back in 2023, rated BB minus, required an equity return of 22% for solar projects, which is significantly higher than, for example, let's say Germany, which is 8%. When it comes to strategy, how can we actually implement a strategy for emerging markets? We should leverage a sustainable strategy for resilience and growth. We must firmly embed this strategy, and with this approach, we are expecting to generate immediate and long-term economic benefits, primarily by mitigating risk and attracting private capital. The first one is, of course, lower cost of funding. And at the end of this sustainable strategy implementation, which companies demonstrating high environmental performance benefits from a lower weighted average cost of capital and signaling reduced exposure to long-term transition risk. With the mitigation of transition risk, Early action helps avoid regulatory penalties, such as carbon pricing, which could create cost equivalent to 50% of EBITDA in high emission sectors by 2030 in rapid transition scenario. And for the resilience and ROI, investment in adaptation measures enhances physical resilience against climate hazards and yield significant positive returns, which companies reporting anticipating a payback of $2 to $19 for every dollar invested. The not least, growth and employment with the sustainable strategies, climate leadership unlocks new markets in green technologies, which is projected to be worth over 14 trillion by 2030, and this transition is projected to create substantial employment with the workforce required to manufacture and install these cheap, clean energy technologies expected to grow 14 million jobs by 2030 in net zero emission scenario. But how are we gonna do that financially? And we must translate the strategies into tangible implementation by independent transmission projects, and public-private partnerships are crucial catalyst for mobilizing private investment. We have a nice example for this actually. Brazil's successful development of over like 50,000 kilometers of transmission line via IPP contracts can be our benchmark for this mobilization. Thank you.
Thank you, Emre. So now moving for the recommendations, we highlighted 4 priorities. First, we must boost investment in grids. As Victoria highlighted, for every dollar spent in renewables, less than half goes to transmission and distribution. So we need to reach a 1:1 ratio matching generation with grid expansion. That means mobilizing private capital through public-private partnerships and independent transmission projects, and using green bonds and blended finance to lower capital costs, especially in emerging markets. Second, we need faster and more predictable permitting. Transmission projects often take over 10 years, with half of the time lost to approvals. Simplifying processes and creating single window system can cut timeless below 5 years. Equally important, early engagement with communities helps build social acceptance and avoid delays. Third, innovation is essential. Using dynamic line rating, flexible AC system, and energy storage can boost capacity without adding new lines. And investing in R&D for advanced materials and automation helps overcome supply chain constraints. Finally, this challenge is global, so we need common standards, regional interconnections, and stronger technology transfer between advanced and emerging economies. Energy security, like climate, doesn't stop locally. So together, these 4 pillars, investment, regulation, innovation, and cooperation, form a coherent plan to turn bottlenecks into backbones in this topic. Moving to the study cases, we did some research and wanted to highlight some of the countries that are doing some progress in this topic. India's Green Energy Corridor aligns renewable generation with new transmission lines. It has already enabled the evacuation of thousands of megawatts of solar and wind power, directly supporting national clean energy goals. Germany shows how technology can substitute physical expansion. By using the one that I just talked about, dynamic line rating, operators can adjust line capacity in real time based on weather and conductor conditions. This digital approach has reduced renewable curtailment and improved grid efficiency. Australia has a Rewriting the Nation initiative with a asset under management of 20 billion in funding. expands transmission, and large-scale battery deployment. These systems provide flexibility, reduce congestion, and strengthen reliability. And finally, Spain, after the latest blackout, triggered major regulatory reform, so raising the grid investment cap by, so now in September, just now, they stated that they are raising the grid investment cap by more than 60% through 2030 and accelerating interconnection with France. Across these cases, success comes from the same formula: coordinating, planning, innovation, and enabling policies. So to conclude, transmission and distribution must be treated as a central pillar of the energy transition. Clean generation alone isn't enough if power can't reach customers. So governments should align every new gigawatt of renewable capacity with the necessary kilometers of transmission. This requires a cohesive toolkit combining innovative finance, streamlined regulation, and public-private collaboration. If we delay, the consequences are clear: curtailed green energy, slower electrification, economic losses, and unequal access to clean power. But the rewards are far greater: stronger energy security, job creation in high-tech industries, and faster progress to our climate goals. As Brazil's experiences shows, innovative financing, strategic policy reform, and modern engineering can overcome the bottlenecks. So yeah, this is our project so far.
Thank you very much indeed, Jacqueline. That was a great process there. And yeah, you know, one of the things I've always thought is when you hit a blocked gate, the best thing to do is look sideways. And I think you were doing that. I think one of the things that you were doing there was to say, well, look, if it's really tricky and expensive to do in developed countries, the climate doesn't care where this is done. You know, let's do it in the countries that really do want to do it, and where it's much cheaper to do. So I think that was a really interesting piece. And I think we have our Professor Castelnuovo here, is that right?
Yeah, he's in the wrong place again for some reason. He's among spectators. Gabriele, can we move him into the speaker part of the webinar? Well, I guess it's not immediate. So probably I would take some comments from one of the discussants, Carolina, for instance.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
Hi. Well, thank you very much to the students for this really interesting presentation. And I'd read through the paper. It's a very interesting topic. I think it's really also timely. The EIA just recently published today, actually, its Renewables 2025 outlook. And it says that 45% of energy will be renewable by 2030. But one of the key obstacles is, amongst others, but mainly, and they list it as the first, grid interconnection issues. So I think it's a really interesting topic, and it's something that we absolutely need to be focusing on. And working in a renewable producer, the biggest energy producer, renewable energy producer in Europe, I think this is exactly what we're looking at. I really liked the way the paper was structured. I thought that the recommendations were very interesting, and I really liked how you looked at the costs of inaction versus the costs of versus the opportunities coming from action. But especially, I liked how you broke down the elements of what the challenges are and how these can be tackled. Something that I find very interesting is when we look at the challenges, and I wrote them down, but you listed amongst them, you know, the high increase of renewables that is faster than the deployment of the grid, increase of electrification, higher demand. it's kind of like a vicious cycle. You know, these challenges come from the fact that the grid isn't developing as fast as we want. So I think what would be very interesting is to really look at the causes of the slowdown. I think permitting is definitely one of them, long permitting timelines and supply chain delays. But why are, you know, if there is an investment opportunity there, why is the money not going to the grid? Why are the financiers not pushing the money there? Is it a political issue? So maybe the policy has to then reflect that better? Or I think deep diving into that aspect can further strengthen the recommendations and really maybe take out something that can be very innovative and a policy proposal, for instance, that could really change things. Because I think that's something that is looked at a little bit lightly.
Yeah, we believe that exactly. That's why we recommend also cooperation between different stakeholders and different countries too, because one of the main challenges is that sometimes the regulators don't provide the correct incentives in order to promote the investments to the grid and to the network, and maybe end up just investing in renewable energy itself in generation, but not in the connection. So yes, we will try to tackle deeper on this topic. Is very relevant. Thank you for your point. We really appreciate all the comments, and yeah, we completely agree with you.
Victoria, on that particular area, is this in part that in many developed countries, actually the grid is in the wrong place because the grid was based on coal, etc., and the renewables are in a different place. So, you know, I'm very familiar with that in the UK, where you know, the North Sea system is in completely the wrong place to London, and that is not something that you can do quickly. It's a complete change of the grid. Now, I don't know how many developed countries are in that situation, but that could be
a very interesting aspect we consider in our analysis. Maybe Luciano knows more about grid connections in Chile, for example, that can complement my answer. I think that complementing policy with logistics is a very interesting analysis, because sometimes the constraints are more difficult to overcome because the regulation, well, you can work on a policy, you can implement it, but if it is really a logistic problem, as you just mentioned, well, it's a different story, of course. It will take more years, more investment in order to move forward. Completely agree. It's something we need to delve into more. Yes, exactly. Like, I think the analysis is very interesting.
And also, if I can add, Cliff and Carolina, I think that there are two aspects. So the first one, regarding Carolina's point, is that it's not that countries are not investing in grids, they are not investing so fast. And I think there is one aspect there that if we think 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, countries were building coal plants or hydro plants that takes 10 years to be in operation stage. And solar now, as I saw in the 2024 EA report, they are taking 1.5, 2 years, 2.5, 3, 4 in the worst case. So renewables energies are making that the construction of plants is much faster than other generation source. So that is one thing. And the second one that Carolina asked, that why they are not investing on that. And I think one important thing is the structure of the market. So the generation market the structure of the generation market is different from the distribution and transmission, where we have mainly monopolies. So in production, you can have 10, 20, 30 different IPPs, for example, that are interesting in developing generation. But in transmission or distribution, it will depend on 2, 3 companies. So I think that there is one point that we should focus, how we can do that those 2 or 3 companies invest more. And finally, something political, because we know that energy prices, electricity prices are very important for the industry competitiveness, but also for the people, normal people. So it's part of their cost. So if you invest more, you will have to transfer this cost to someone. Normally it's the final client, and therefore it's a political cost for governments. I think that governments don't want big investments in their 4 years, 6 years of mandate, because they know that increasing cost will be a political cost.
Interesting. Thank you. Should we come to Leah? Leah, are you with? Yeah.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I guess I'll start by introducing myself. I'm a director at the Brazilian Center for International Relations, SEBRI. We're a Rio-based think tank, one of the main in South America, and we look at different issues related to Brazil's international insertion and participation. Energy transition is one of our focuses, and that's also my focus of study. I wanted to thank you for sharing and for the opportunity to participate in this debate. It's been very insightful, and I'm going to second Carolina, saying that I think it was a very well thought out and well drafted report that you wrote. I think it really highlights the intertwined nature, both of the different risks that we have. I also appreciated the mentions to Brazil's case in particular when it comes to the impacts of inaction on agriculture, on the energy system, and on others. I think that cost of inaction is something that is not necessarily well documented and sufficiently taken into account when it comes to investor decisions, etc. And I think it's really important to have contributions and pieces like this that also kind of lay the ground for that. I also would like to emphasize how relevant this discussion on grids is for Brazil. So a lot of I think all of the challenges that you mentioned are shared here in Brazil. We do have huge problems with curtailment, and the discussion that just took place, Carolina's insights and then Luciano's and Victoria's additions, I think, are very relevant in the case of Brazil as well, where we have also, Cliff, you mentioned the question of geography. So in Brazil, we have a continental sized country, and we have power grids that have been developed mostly in the south, whereas renewable capacities in the north. And so obviously you have to, build these grids. There are very few players that actually have the capacity to have these ultra high voltage grids and transmission lines that can cross basically a continent. State Grid is one of them, but there are a few players. You can count them on a hand, and there are a few bidders in auction. So I think that's to answer also Carolina's provocation. I think that's also one issue. I really liked Luciano's comment also on the political costs. Here in Brazil, we have a reflection on this, on how to charge the best way the use of electricity, and how can that not have an impact on the population, especially the poor parts of the population. It's still an ongoing reflection, and there are fiscal reforms and processes that are underway to try to think of the fiscal aspects in a more efficient way, but it's not necessarily an easy equation to solve. And to finish, we also have the issue of, you know, having a lot of investors interested in producing, and then when it comes to curtailment issues, these investments become less relevant. Just one second. So these investments become less interesting, and we have a huge issue of curtailments and of European investors not being interested in coming into the market anymore for renewables. So this is halting a bit of the expansion, especially of wind power here in Brazil. But I'll leave my colleague Julia speak to that as well. I just wanted to mention also, because I think that was something of interest to you, 2 points. One is that we at SEBRI have 2 studies that could be useful for your work. The first one is a study.
Leah, if I might say, because we've just got 8 minutes left.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If you could share that to
Of course.
the colleagues, that would be really helpful. Thank you so much.
Yes, I can share that.
Thank you. Just to check, Julia, Julia Paletta, are you with us?
Yes, I am, Cliff.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Well, just to introduce myself and make the best use of our remaining time, my name is Julia Paletta. I'm the head of Ocean Energy Pathway, which is an institution that promotes offshore wind energy. I'm based in Brazil, and actually today I'm in a visit to a city called Natal, which is in the northeast, and it's one of the cities that the regions that generates most of the wind power in Brazil when they came here for issues around wind power. Just for you to have an understanding and to really say how relevant this work that the students develop about the grid the capacity. This month, the curtailment on wind power reached 20% of the capacity, and on solar 30% of the capacity. So this curtailment in Brazil, it's a huge issue. So far this year, it has been more than 5 billion reais lost in curtailment. So this has been affecting Brazil very hard. And important also to emphasize that these problems of flexibility, we need to take care, because some narratives around the need of fossil fuel return, they start to grow when you have this narratives around the problem that renewables are causing to the energy system, especially when we are, since we are talking a lot here, especially in the press, talking about potential blackout. So I think this is a very important approach that needs to be, this problem needs to be discussed very openly, because otherwise we can face severe setbacks. So I think as far as the work, I think it's the students, they tackle the problem, which is to boost investments on grid expansion, but not on expansion, because you need to remember that the grids, they get old. So we need to revamp grids as well. Especially here in Brazil, my friend Leia was talking how big is the country, the difference on generation and consumption. So Brazil, for instance, needs not only grid expansion, but also grid renovation. And this is a key thing that is a suggestion. Another suggestion from my perspective, it's about identifying what are the immediate immediate actions that you can take, because expanding the grid takes a long time, takes planning, takes investment. So by identifying, potential market asymmetries, you can correct with immediate policy corrections. In the Brazil's case, for instance, the sector of the solar sector, the distributed generator sector, has been highly subsidized, and the sector has become competitive and it doesn't need subsidies anymore. So immediate checks on the policy can orient and can guide, better solutions towards offloading energy. And I think a last comment is that this problem of grid, besides expansion, it lies on energy planning, heavily on energy planning. And by that, I would say that, of course, storage is the obvious one. But there are some other alternatives, such as off-grid solutions. We've been talking a lot here in Brazil about the potential for hybridization of projects and assessing complementarities between different energy sources. For example, one
Julia,
component.
Julia,
Yeah.
I'm conscious we've just got the 4 minutes left. Is there any one key final point from you?
No, I think that's mainly this. So I would say that energy planning is key. And just to finalize, I would recommend that you use the social cost of carbon to inform policymaking. This has been very interesting on applying social cost of carbon when analyzing the net present value of projects.
Please, we can have 5 more minutes, say even 7 minutes. No, just so that Julia can finish, and we have other discussants, in fact, Wolfgang, etc.
Also, I would say if you like to send us an email with additional recommendations, we are very open to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Wolfgang, please join us. I think you're muted.
Yeah, I was muted. Okay, yeah. So thanks all for the great presentation. And I must say it was refreshing to finally somebody talks. I mean, so many people talk about grid. Exactly, because it's the focus. You notice, and we all know for years we just talk about wind and solar and more the better. And I also, for me, it was very interesting because in Germany we have already the point that we have so much generation that various cities actually forbid the connection to the grid in the first place because there's too much power in summer in the grid. And there's nowhere in the country anywhere, I think, and even all over Europe. And the Spanish example I found super interesting because just a week before the blackout, there was a famous news, 100% renewable in the grid a few days before. So, and anyway, but this is not the point I want to make here. I found it very interesting when you call to say the social costs of carbon. And this is something where I'm actually looking for years for proper calculations in order to make the point how expensive it is not to invest. That somebody really does this painful work that exactly try to quantify it. Because then it would mean that actually you have even to use the climate models to figure out how much expensive a delay of investment would be. You know what I mean? Like if we delay the reduction of CO2 by so many years, or I mean, this would be one of the most impressive messages to say, okay, if we don't do this. Anyway, I got my point. And one thing I also found very interesting, I don't know, I can't remember who mentioned it. I think, anyway, that I was surprised to hear that there's a shortage of material. This is where something I would love to hear really more about. Exactly, if somebody is there's a market, there's a thing. And we can see the solar panels from China, they cost now, a 500-watt solar panel costs now 60 euros. So it's like cardboard is more expensive than a solar panel now of the same size. Anyway, so I found that actually a bit counterintuitive, but anyway, it's your finding. I mean, don't doubt it, but I would love to hear more about this. So.
Thank you very much indeed. Just before we go back to Francesco, just one thought. I mean,
we probably have a Matteo who can probably talk. Matteo, are you able to say something? Matteo is the professor.
He's muted still.
He's muted. Okay. All right. So sorry, no, because I saw Matteo is enabled. Okay.
It's a shame.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah. One other thought. It was microgrids, which used to be, 10, 15 years ago, people talked a lot about microgrids. They've gone out of it. But is that as an interim solution in some of these problems? But otherwise, Francesco, I think I should hand over to you because I think the students have done an outstanding piece. Lots of very useful additional comments from our discussants. But Francesco, your
Yeah,
thoughts.
we also had a question here, but I think you sort of answered. It was on chat. You see that, Cliff?
Yes, I can indeed. So this was from Giuseppe Nenna, who can effectively coordinate the upgrading of transmission grids. How can interconnection be protected from the risk of attacks and vulnerabilities of digitized grids? Now that is very current in many jurisdictions. Any thoughts on this from the students? Victoria, looks like you're going to.
So,
oh, Luciana, please.
Yes, I will tackle the first question. The second one, I think, is a big challenge. The security of the grids and also not only because of cyber, for example, but also because of fires and climate change phenomenon. But I will tackle the first one. I think that to coordinate the upgrading of transmission grids, and I will say grids in general, you need a table with all the stakeholders. So you need to work with the public entities. You need to work with the ministers of economy, the minister of energy. You need to work with the distribution and transmission companies, both, and you need to work with generators, because it's important, I think, transparency in this process. It's important that transmission distribution companies know where energy is being generated, but also for transmission, for example, that is a big problem, where energy is being demanded. So I think that, for example, one of the things that we need to do to coordinate that is a coordination between transmission companies and distribution companies. Transmission companies don't only need to know where energy is being generating, also they need to know where energy is being consuming. And I think that that's a very important point. I think that some countries in Europe are working on that. The case of Chile, so the Minister of Energy, for example, in the case of Chile, they are working in a pilot where the distribution companies have to upload in a web page all the power capacity that is able to be used, and which are the power capacity that is not able to be used. So in this way, for example, if you see a part of the map where it's where you are using all the capacity of the distribution, maybe you will need more energy to supply the needs.
Thank you, Luciano.
Also, on top of that, when there is asymmetry of information, it's very important the role of the regulators, apart from the combination of different stakeholders, because it plays fundamental role in order to close this gap of information. I think most of the problems in general are of lack of information and coordination costs. So that is a very important topic we can dig into our analysis too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I think we are now 5 minutes over. So Francesco, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. You are the very reason why we are doing the Dolomite conference on global governance of climate change, talking about energy. You are the energy that literally the world needs to go past the gridlocks. One question that I had looking to your last slide on recommendation is a little bit similar to the one that Luciano just answered. Who should we talk with? No, who is the person? No, who is? This is a question which has got a very clear answer in China, and this is probably why China is progressing so quickly. Here in Europe, I do not even know who is the commissioner who is after energy. The answer that I got from a very good friend of mine who is an MEP, Giorgio Gori, he said that he counted 23 commissioners who are about energy out of 27. So this is just to say. We will try to talk with COP30. And one question that I had with for Julia and Leah was more to better understand which are the expectations of the presidency of COP30 on energy transition. But we can talk about that in Venice. So thank you very much, and we'll see each other in 10 days. 10 days now, 10, more or less 10 days. Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.